All right. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Chris Downey from Brivia Consulting, and welcome to From Resignation to Resuscitation, 5 ways to elevate people in performance. This is our final webinar of 2021. It has been quite a series that we have had. So we want to thank you on behalf of all of us at Brivia. Thank you for joining us. These webinars have been building up so much momentum over the past few months, and we've really appreciated our friends that have returned, and also want to welcome some of the new participants. So thank you for being here. I'll introduce Steve, who's of course our speaker for the day in just a moment. But we're here for 45 minutes today. And for those of you that have participated in these webinars before, you'll know we love to make these as interactive as possible. So let's load up the chat. In fact, let people know how you're doing this morning, and let us know where you're joining us from, because I know we have people joining us in from all over the country, and really all over the world. So thank you for being here. Let's use the chat. Let's use the Q&A. Don't wait for Q&A time to ask your questions. I'll be monitoring the chat while Steve's presenting. We actually have one of our team members that will be here as well, paying attention to the chat. So let's keep that chat going. And let's keep this as interactive as possible. As for those of you that have seen Steve speak before, you know he gets fueled by that. So keep that going. Also know that we're recording this session, as we always do, and we will make the recording available. So feel free to sit back and listen, ask questions. You don't need to take a bunch of notes, because you'll have access to the recording, and you can share this recording with anyone that you feel could benefit from it as well. And do stick around as Steve wraps up at the end. We're going to give you we'll give you some information around how to stay in touch in 2022 and some of the upcoming webinars, as well as some of the information that we'll be sharing with you. I'll come back at the end to share that with you all. But let me introduce Steve Groot. Steve is our president at Brivia. Steve's an international speaker. He's an author of responsive leadership, which is used all over the world. He's a change architect. He's a human behavior enthusiast. He's lots of things, but above all, he's a human being that cares, and he is committed to helping people be the best they can be in any situation. And that's what Steve is all about, and that's what he's here to share with you today. So I'm going to hand it over to Steve to take it away. Steve, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm looking at the chat. I'm so excited, as always. You can see on the PowerPoint slide, this is developed for leaders and HR professionals, but it's also developed for people who care about people. Thank you for being here. And if you're in a role of leadership or aspiring leadership, I just wanted to say thank you, because your job is not just a job, it's more of a calling. And we know that leadership has a profound impact on people. And so, the people that are being led and the people that they serve as well. So thank you so much for your commitment to get to better for yourself and for the people that you serve. And, so the people that you're responsible for are going to be grateful for what we're going to talk about today. Our opening, Chris Downey, thank you very much from Brivia, and everyone for being here. We're talking about resuscitation. So you've heard about the Great Resignation. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But today I'm going to do something really, I'm going to show a couple of things that are immediate in terms of strategies, but we're going to reflect on something that matters right off the beginning. I want to bring a reflection in for you. We're going to talk about the Great Resignation. We're going to shift the focus, though, from those who have left to those who remain there, lost and possibly left behind. Right? So the ones that are still among us. And when I say among us, we are some of those people. In the last webinar, a lot of people acknowledge that our workplaces can be so much better than they are. From a little bit to a lot. We're going to talk about the power of meaning and values and bring it down really specifically and let you know that they're the antidote for all types of resignation. We're going to get into the killers of morale. What are the things that have been killing us for a while in terms of morale and motivation, and what can we do about it? That will lead into strategies to resuscitate. So we're going to get into that. And what I want to show today, as I am going to demonstrate for those of you that have come here, one of the most powerful forces, strategies for being able to resuscitate somebody in a matter of seconds. And I'm going to give you the opportunity to experience that in our time together. And then we're going to finish off with the one thing that you can do immediately when you leave here to elevate people in performance. So that's ambitious. as Chris said, I want to be challenged. Put your questions in the chat. Stick around for questions and answers. We're going to leave some room for discussion because I know most of you know me. I love questions. I love comments. I love a good discussion. So let's get started. I want to make this more than just a conceptual exercise. So wherever you are right now, I'm going to put these 15 words. Sorry, I think there's probably 15 to close to 18 words on this on the PowerPoint. Before we get into the presentation, I want you to reflect on what matters most. So I want you to have an actual visceral experience that's positive towards the end of the session. So what I want you to do right now is have a look at these words, and I want you to connect with only 3 of them. So take an opportunity to look at them in a work example. Think about your work. Which words on the PowerPoint do you connect with the most? Which ones do you feel have the most meaning? Like when you look at, is it growth? Is it patient safety? Is it trust? Is it outcomes? Now, you might connect with more than 3 on there, but I want you to choose 3. And what I want you to do, once you choose them, this is very specific. I want you to write those 3 words down somewhere. And I want you to just write them down and put a circle around it. Okay, so I'm going to give you some time to do that. Look at these words. And this is going to come into one of the most powerful strategies I have for people to resuscitate other people that aren't doing well. So once again, have a look at the words. Some might call these words values on the PowerPoint. Some of them you might call them principles. But I want you to pick 3. Now this is really important as well. If there is a value that's really important to you that is not up there, I want you to choose that one. So maybe family is like your number 1 value, or loyalty, right? If that's there, I want you to put that in your top 3. Okay. Once you pick your 3, write them down and put a circle around it. And then I want you to put a circle right around those 3 words. And then I just want you to set them aside, right? I want you to set them aside, or you can even just flip that page over. I don't want you looking at that page. Okay. So let's get into this, right? So let's get into this. I'm glad you did this exercise. It's going to pay big dividends when we're done. So let's talk about the thing that we're here to, called the Great Resignation. You've heard about it. I mean, you can't throw a resume into a crowd without hitting somebody who's talking about the Great Resignation, right? So what is really behind the Great Resignation? If you were at some of our webinars, there's a really good chance, statistically, some of you are thinking about leaving. Right? But what the Great Resignation is it's a term that's been used for this mass exodus from the workplace, that people are simply leaving their jobs in large numbers. And it's by the millions worldwide. In the US, it's big. In UK, in Canada. So we boiled it down in many of our interviews and surveys that, well, many people are reevaluating or taking stock about what's important to them. The pandemic was kind of a catalyst, but also an accelerant. What's important in their lives, and people are more than ever reflecting on, how do things serve me in my life? And because work is a really big part of that, people are reconsidering what they want for work, what they want from work. And if it's not aligned with what they want from work, well, they're simply leaving, right? We've mentioned this before, right? It's been referred to as the Great Resignation. But what's interesting is there is a greater resignation. Ones that started, many employees resigned a long time ago before even leaving, right? It started long before this mass exodus, right? It was on the radar and the signs were all there. See, the Great Resignation did not come out of nowhere, right? That's what's really, really important here. Overall, employees have been saying that their experiences at work have ranged from poor to absolutely deplorable, right? This shouldn't be a surprise because for so long, we know that employee engagement globally and across every single sector has pretty much flatlined. And as a matter of fact, it's consistently been getting worse over the last 20 years. The other thing is that we reached an epidemic in burnout before the actual pandemic, right? So people have been unsatisfied at work for a long time. And no doubt many of you people that are here, many of you that have joined us today know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Many of us resigned a long time ago and in different ways, but see, we still went to work, right? Because if you look at the definition of resign, it's about just submitting. It's about resigning our voice maybe, resigning our effort, right? So this is a different type of resignation, right? People have resigned to stay, but choosing not to leave is very different from the active choice to stay in a job. And it's characterized by lower motivation. It's characterized by lower morale. We're going to talk about motivation, morale, and get to strategies right away. And it's characterized by poor performance. Many people stay in their jobs despite their intentions to leave, right? And some don't have the privilege to leave. Some people don't have the opportunity to go and find work elsewhere. And they're sticking to it. They're doing their best. And sometimes they're doing it the best at the expense of their own emotional, mental, and physical, and maybe even spiritual mental health. So I refer to this segment, and I wrote about this in my book, as the workforce that I call the working wounded. Okay. But there's a great opportunity here. There's a massive opportunity. So let's bring in the hope, okay? So there's a huge opportunity. There have been millions of people who've left their jobs. Absolutely, yes. And it's causing a lot of strife and a lot of money, right? A lot of disruption. But the number of employees that are giving up or thinking of leaving far exceeds the number of people who have actually left. The number of people who remain right now in the work is massive. And that's the opportunity that we're going to talk about today. Leaders in their organizations, we have an opportunity to tune into what the experiences of these people are so that we can resuscitate, right? And I mean resuscitate, I really mean breathe life into, to elevate those who are thinking of leaving, those who are lost, and those who are left behind. It's time to move, and I talked a little bit about this, but this is it. It's time to move from resignation to resuscitation, right? And let's talk about resuscitation before we talk about how to do it, right? Let's look at the words here. I like this short definition, right? The action or process of reviving someone. So it's not to vive them, it's to revive them, which means there was life in them at one time, right? There was a spark. And I think this is really important, right? Vive, taken from the Latin word, the French word, right? Vivre, which is life. We're going to breathe life into them. Another definition I really, really like around resuscitation is the action of making something active or vigorous again. There it is. There's that word again. Vigorous. So if you're thinking about reviving, if you're thinking about vigorous, if you're thinking about, you're probably connecting with times that you felt really good yourself at work, times you felt motivated, times that you felt that the morale was really good, right? So what resuscitation is about, it's about igniting that flame. It's about igniting that spark again, right? And we're going to talk about how we can do that today. We're going to talk about how we can do that with some of the most simple strategies that can be done without any money and with very little bit of time. So how do we revive people? How do we elevate their vigor that they once had so that people can contribute to motivation so we can have better morale? Well, let's talk about those two concepts. So I want to talk about those two concepts. Morale and motivation, you often hear them together, right? If you think about morale, it's about enthusiasm, it's about excitement, it's about commitment. It almost sounds like we're talking about motivation. Most people, when they say, well, I was motivated on that team, you hear that team talk about great morale. So they're inextricably linked, right? So Brivia, some of the research that we do, and if you know us, we do a lot of work on meaning, and we understand that humans are moved by meaning. So we're going to talk about that. Motivation and morale are strongly connected to the meaning we experience on our work. Okay, so I'm gonna bring this, I'm gonna take it to a high level and then bring it right down. Humans are moved by meaning, and we move to meaning. So meaning is a very powerful force of motivation, and it's a very powerful force of morale. And we need it more than ever. So just to bring it back, we do a little bit of work with the Viktor Frankl Institute, and you can see that, you know, it's clear that the search for meaning is our primary motivation for living. So, you know, it's pretty important. It's not a small thing. The other thing that we know is that life has meaning under all sorts of circumstances, including work, including different aspects of our life. This is what's really important, though. Let's bring it right into the workplace, because I love the work. I love the work by Lee Whittington, who's a professor of management at the University of Dallas. We've talked about him before, right? The quest for meaning is an innate human need, and our work is the principal need for fulfilling that need. So think about this for a second. Work is a place where we can have our needs met, right? Work is a place where we can experience meaning. Now, if you think about meaning and motivation and morale, if we're lacking motivation and we're lacking morale, there's a really good chance that we're lacking meaning. So the workplace becomes this huge factor, and meaning becomes a factor for increasing engagement. So let's bring it down from 300,000 feet to like right above the ground, okay? So this is what's interesting. With this idea of meaning and work being meaningful, we believe that people are searching for meaning, and that the Great Resignation is actually a mass migration towards meaning, right? If you think about that, if people want more meaning in their work and in their life, where I work, who I work, how I work, right? That sounds like a really big opportunity here and something for us to think about. So let's make it very practical. Now, some of you might be thinking right now, you might be going, wow, Steve, now we're talking about meaning. That sounds like a tall order. Like we can't even get our heads around culture. And now you want us to tackle meaning and meaningful work? Okay, well, let's simplify this. So we're going to make it really simple. According to our work, let's move from meaning to something you will all connect with. According to our work, the most powerful force of meaning are values. So if you see on the left, we're not going to get into all the things on this slide, but what I want you to know is that there's about 10 dimensions of meaning. And the most powerful one of all of them, now they're all powerful, are values. And we're going to come back to this. Okay? Values are the most powerful force of meaning. Now, if we know that that's a thread, we can start thinking about how do values show up at work, or how do they show up in our life, and how can we actually leverage them? So if you're already thinking that, you're on the right track. Okay? They're so powerful, though. Values are such a powerful force of meaning and motivation that they don't only contribute, that meaning does not only impact motivation and morale, it actually impacts our ability to engage at higher levels and perform at our absolute best. The other thing that it does, and I cannot wait to show you the strategies. The other thing that it does is it actually contributes to our resilience. Okay? So most people agree, so if you think about that, values are the most potent force of meaning and motivation. Okay? And when we're connected to our values and we're having a meaningful experience, we're not only highly motivated, we're experiencing greater morale. Okay. Most of us agree to some extent that the Great Resignation did not come out of nowhere, that many of us have felt that work has been poor to deplorable for a long time. Things have been bad for a while. So let's look at some of the things that led to this Great Resignation. Let's look at some of the things. And I think what's really important is the pandemic has been blamed a lot. It was not only a catalyst, but it was more of an accelerant to kind of shine a light on all the things that we were currently and for a long time dissatisfied with. Now, this is where I want you to get ready with your questions and comments, because we're going to have an opportunity for discussion. I want you to challenge some of these things, because these are just perspectives. And what's really important, and somebody said to me the other day, they said, Steve, don't you think using the term killers is a bit violent? For killers of morale. And I've been thinking about the impact not having morale, not having meaning, and not being motivated at work has done to people. And it actually has killed them. People are dying at work. Their mental, emotional, physical, spiritual health has deteriorated to an extent where they've actually needed psychological or medical intervention. So here's the hope. What are the killers of morale? Well, the number one killer of morale right now is the lack of recognition. We use this tool called the M3 throughout the pandemic that kind of identifies meaning, where people are experiencing it. During the pandemic, especially in health, we thought, oh my gosh, workload is going to be an area of concern, compensation. But the number one thing that comes up over and over and over is people are saying, we want to be recognized. We want to be affirmed and validated, right? We want to be, recognition isn't just about validation and affirmation, but it's also having their work that's positive focused on before they're told what they're not doing well. So lack of recognition, and this is going to come to play into some of the strategies that we offer. Right, here's another one, value incongruence. This is one of the biggest killers. Back up a couple of minutes. Our research is showing that values are a potent force of meaning, right? So that energy is positive, but when the opposite happens, when the opposite of meaning happens, it has a negative effect, right? So value incongruence. So what does that mean? Well, that's a big one, because often it's unintentional, so this is important. But value incongruence means that we behave or speak or interact or engage with each other in a way that's incongruent with the values that we said were important. Okay. It's also when we, so this is really important because this you hear about people, companies have values, departments or projects have values, right? Whenever we behave in a way that's incongruent, it has a negative impact on us. And this is a killer. How does this work? Well, many of us have been in a situation where, we're told that we're called to a collaborative, creative, right, partnering meeting. And you're sitting in the meeting and they don't ask you your opinion. And you're sitting in the meeting and there's no collaboration. One person talks, right? At first that feels like weird and uncomfortable. But if you live in an environment where your values are being worked against or misaligned or out of synchronicity, it turns into disillusionment. And after a while, it becomes demoralizing. And I'm going to talk a little about that in a sec. Final 3. Now, in the advertisement, I said I'd talk about 5, but 5 is too depressing. We're going to stop at 3 today and get into 5 strategies. The next one is poor quality leadership, right? This is the biggest one. The reason why quality leadership has such an impact on morale and motivation and meaning is because look at the first 2. Almost all dimensions around values and recognition and meaning flow through or intersect with the leader, which makes the leader a very powerful force of meaning and motivation, right? So the quality of leadership, now I'm going to give you 2 simple strategies. If you're sitting there going, I want to be a better leader, I'm going to give you the absolute simple strategy that will improve not only your leadership, but meaning and motivation and morale. So why are solutions simpler than we think? Because people say that to me. They say, Steve, we're looking for a macro solution. You've got to think outside the box. You know something? Our team has been saying lately, we got to get back inside the box, actually. We have gone so far outside the box, and there's things that need to be done, including getting back to basics. What humans need more than ever is more meaning and a connection to values and what matters most, right? So that they can create more meaning at work. So if humans move to meaning, and we can create more meaningful experiences at work, then they stay put, right? Then they stay put. So how can we stop all forms of resignation? Well, let's get into the strategies. If you know me, my favorite thing to do is to get practical, to move from the ideal to the real. So the 5th strategy, by the way, is one of the most powerful ones, and I'm going to give you an experience. If you can stick around for that, that's awesome. And then we're going to open it up to questions. Strategy number 1. Thank your people more. This is the number one thing. By the millions globally, employers are saying they don't feel recognized. But remember, when you recognize them and you validate them, be specific, be genuine. We call them the 3 A's. They're really easy. The first one is acknowledgement, eye contact. I can't tell you how many people I've been in companies that people don't see me, Steve. They don't even know. We walk in hallways, we're looking at our phone. So A is acknowledgement, the first A. The second A is admiration. Find something to admire them about, just their haircut, the way they talk about their kids, the coffee that they bring. There's something that we could admire about almost everybody. The third one is the most important. It's appreciative. Appreciation about something specific and concrete. I really like the way you run a meeting. I really like the way you give feedback, right? The number one thing that people need, they're saying we're not doing. So just start by thanking them more, acknowledge them, admire them, appreciate them. It's a major source of motivation and meaning. Number 2, make value alignment a priority. Now, this is one of those things, because it's a big killer. People know me. I've said to companies, paint over those values. I've actually said that. Almost got fired one time. Remember that, because values are the most powerful force of meaning and motivation. If values are on the wall, we have to all have create an understanding. What do those values mean to us? That's where you got to start. Have conversations with the people that you're responsible for. What does collaboration mean to us in a meeting? What does it look like when we have a disagreement? Right? So these are the things that we can do, right? Here's the really good question leaders can ask their people. It's a very easy question. What comes next can be a little bit challenging, is for me to ask you folks, right? In the chat, I see Amy and I see Tim and I see Carol and Cheryl, right? If I was your director, Lena, Lisa, I would say, Lisette, these values are important to us, these 3. Can you tell me, give me some feedback, are we acting or interacting in a way that's aligned with our values? And can you share where we're doing that really well? And can you tell me where we're out a bit, right? Once we breach that crust and have that conversation, we're now able to keep it safe to say, I don't think we're living our values as much as we said we would, right? And have a conversation so we can get closer to better, right? Strategy number 3, improve the quality of your leadership. What we know about great leaders, and I work with tons of them, they all know they can get to better. They all know there's something that they can improve upon. If you're not getting feedback from your direct reports, that should be a green flag, not a red flag. Green means go, red means stop. Green, go. Well, let's discover what's going on, right? So why is this important? Remember, quality leadership has the most significant impact on people. Right? You know this because throw this in the chat. See if you can fill in the blanks. If I say, here's a quote, common, ready for this? You're going to fill in the blank. People don't leave their jobs, they leave their, can people fill that in the chat? Can you take a guess? Okay, manager, bosses, manager, bosses, manager, bosses, manager, bosses, manager, manager. Okay, all right. Awesome, thanks everybody. How common is this, right? There's about 100,000 options, but we know for sure we leave bosses when we're not having a positive, meaningful experience. So what do they want? People want meaningful and helpful. So here we go. Here comes your strategy. You ready for this? Your strategy for you is to go back to your people, for me to go back to Lisette, for me to go back to Corey, for me to go back to Trisha and Trevor and say this. Trisha, I don't know if I've shared this with you, but I would like to be a better leader. I really would. So what I'm hoping from you is if you can share 2 strengths, 2 things that I'm doing well as a leader, and 1 area that I could get better at, no matter how small. That's what I want from each of you, right? And that is going to form the basis of my professional development as a leader, right? Right. So there's all stuff that happens out there. I've asked lots of people to do this and like, well, I'm a bit reluctant, I'm a bit scared, but ask them. So be suspicious though, and I'm telling everyone this, if you're not hearing an area that you can develop, you have to ask yourself, what do I know about this? Is it safe enough to come to me? Do they feel that they can't? Do they like me? Whatever it is, but you should be going after at least 1 small thing that you can develop better. So those 3 things, those 3 strategies take care of the 3 biggest killers of morale. So if you want to resuscitate people and elevate their ability to perform, to be motivated, to have greater morale, awesome. And because it's the holiday season, I have a gift for you. My gift for you, or our gift from Brivia, is what we call the Key Performance Motivator Scale. One of the things, I talk about how important meaning is, but meaning isn't always easy to get to. So we've created a tool called the Key Performance Motivator Scale, and we're going to send it up with a follow-up. And it's a discussion guide. It's very easy to use. And it asks people to identify where do they feel excited in work. It actually gives them choices. Is it the values? Is it client success? Is it interactions? Is it a task of interest? And what they do is you can have a conversation. This is where the magic happens. Because if Tim says to me in a conversation, he says, Steve, teamwork is really, really important to me. Okay, great. Here comes the magic. What difference does that make, Tim? How's it helpful? And this is in the discussion guide that we are going to send to you. Right? How's that helpful? And he says, well, I really like interacting and being helpful with other people, and I like using my knowledge. There we go. That's the meaning. So whenever we can put Tim in situations where he can be helpful and where he can use his knowledge, those are his values. He's going to have a positive experience and he is going to do better, right? So that's how it works. So we're sending that to you. Happy holidays. That's the gift. And here, before we get to number 5, are you ready for the absolute most powerful experience for resuscitating and elevating someone's vigor and their level of energy? Okay. This is what I want you to do. I'm going to open up the chat here. Okay. Okay, awesome, great. Yeah, ooh, that's too bad. I'm reading some of the chats here. Okay, so what we're going to do, before I tell you what strategy number 5 is, we're going to actually live it. So I want you to get into a mode right now where you're feeling like it's one of the, okay, so before I do this, I want you to know, you might feel a little bit bad momentarily, but then we're gonna move on, okay? Because I want you to go to your experience. Okay, you ready for this? Here we go. This is the scenario. I want you to think about a really bad day, okay? Not the details. I want you to connect with feeling overwhelmed. If you're human, you can go there. I want you to connect with not feeling motivated. I want you to connect with feeling absolutely exhausted. Okay, I want you to connect with that. You've been there before. Now, I'm going to be your manager, and let's just say there's a level of trust between us, but it doesn't change. It doesn't change how tired you are. It doesn't change how unmotivated you are. It does not change how exhausted you are. Here comes the experiment. Okay, so you're at a 0 for motivation. I'm going to ask you to do one more task for me. You don't think you can do it. You really don't think you can do it. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to say, Tim, Trisha, right? Brenda, what I need from you right now is I need you to do this one thing. Tracy, Paul, Carrie, just this one thing. And as a human, you ask me the most important question at this moment. You say, Steve, why? Why should I do this? And my answer to you is what's in that circle that you wrote down earlier. So I want you to look at the words that you wrote down in that circle. I want you to connect with them, okay? I want you to connect with them, and I want you to connect with them as if that was my answer to you. My question to you is, do you feel a change in your level of motivation? Yes, maybe, or no. If I can see that in the chat. If that was my answer, yes, yes, absolutely, yes, 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 absolutely, right? Yeah, okay, awesome. Oh yeah, just because the circles are fundamentally me. Yes, absolutely. So this is what's important, everybody. In one moment, from exhausted and overwhelmed to energetic and willing. I've done this experiment before. I've had people say, Steve, I feel I got the energy. I'll do it. I can lift a car, right? If that was my reason. So what's also important is, imagine this. Somebody asked me, why did you ask us to put it in a circle? Well, I asked you to draw a circle around it because those are just 3 things. Imagine we added 2 more values that were important to you, okay? Hold on with me for a second. 2 more values that were important to you. I added 1 or 2 of your professional goals, that if you do this for me or with me, you will actually get closer to your goals as well. And imagine I threw in one of your needs that was important to you and a strength of yours that demonstrated you could do this. You wouldn't even be standing there anymore. You would already be gone doing the thing that I asked you to. That's how you resuscitate somebody, but it's dependent on one thing, that I actually knew. If I don't know what can motivate you and resuscitate you, here's the answers that I was taught early in my career. When Trisha asks me, Steve, why should I do this? Because you have to. Why should I do this? Paul, well, because it's the way we do things around here. Francine, you have to do this because it's your job. You have to do it, Tim, because you're on a need-to-know basis and you don't need to know. You just need to do it. How motivating are those things? How motivating are those? So the key to that number 1 strategy, which is get to know your people's values, is key to whether you can be the difference between getting up or giving up. And I've been there. We've been there. We've pandemic. People are tired. They're exhausted. And they ask why. They say, why, Steve? You know what I say? I said, because we're here to help, Cheryl. We're here because we agreed. We said that we were going to collaborate and follow through and be accountable. Cheryl's gone now. She's like, damn right, Steve. But see, if I didn't know those 3 things unintentionally, and this is what keeps me up at night, is that because somebody didn't teach me that, it doesn't matter how much I care about Cheryl. I care a lot about Cheryl. But if I don't know the values that are important to her, I unintentionally and unfortunately, I only not resuscitate her and motivate her and inspire her, I actually debilitate her. And that's what I think is happening right now in the workplace, is that when we as leaders aren't connected with what's important to our people, we unintentionally start to guess, we start to try to figure it out, and we start to unintentionally and unfortunately make it worse. So here's the great opportunity. The one thing, more than ever, and I'm going to open it up to questions right now. I love your questions, so stick around because there's a couple other things here. People are reflecting more than ever on what's important to them. They're open more than ever to exploring. More than ever, they want to talk about it. More than ever, they want meaning. More than ever, they want to feel better. And leaders, we have an opportunity to connect with that. We have an opportunity to access that, right? We have an opportunity to stop guessing. And one of the things I often say is we cannot leave a place unless we arrive. I can't leave that place of exhaustion with Cheryl. I can't leave it with Brenda. I can't leave it with Joel. I can't leave it with Chris until I arrive at an understanding of what's important to them. And then we can move. And then we can be revigorated. Then we can be revived. And then we can run to work excited again instead of with that knot in our stomach and start to perform in ways that we didn't even think or return to what we thought was possible. So find out what's important to them, what they value. Finally, I want to say two things for 2022. 2022 for Brivia and for many of our clients, and hopefully for some of us here, is we are going to really focus on meaning. And one of the things we've created is what's known as a most meaningful measures, which gives us some insight into where are they finding meaning, what's going well, and how can we elevate what's already happening or develop what's not happening to create more meaning. And the other thing I want to say is a lot of this, if you're sitting there, all of these intersect at a really important point, which is you have to have conversations. Some people go, oh my gosh, do I have to talk to those people? Yes, we have to have conversations. So I want you to know we've also got that covered. We developed a program just for that reason called Core Communication, a program that covers everything we've talked about today, but offers you the tools to have conversations with people about things that matter most, to access those forces of meaning, to order to resuscitate motivation, morale, and better results. So let's make 2022 meaningful. And I'm going to pass it back over to Chris, and I'm going to open it up to questions and comments through the chat. And I just wanted to thank everybody for being here, for making time and taking time to get closer to better for yourself and for the people that you care about. And as I said earlier, the solutions are not as hard as we think. Let's get back to basics. Have a good holiday, everybody. I'm going to pass it over to Chris, and let's have some questions and comments. Awesome.
Very good, Steve. Thank you. And there's just some, keep the questions coming in here. And I've got a few that I've been pulling out since the beginning of the session. The first one starts with meaning equals purpose. And there's a question mark there. So you mentioned meaning. How does that link to purpose? And what are your thoughts on that, Steve?
Yeah, great catch. I mean, purpose and meaning are definitely connected. Purpose, however, purpose is important, but not everybody knows their purpose, right? So purpose is a part of meaning. So from our perspectives, meaning is your goals, your values, your needs, your strengths. So it's much more robust. Purpose is a high level goal that's important to us, that is also a value that does fuel passion and reinforce purpose. So absolutely, they're connected. I wouldn't say they're necessarily the same thing. I would say that purpose is definitely a mechanism of meaning. And I get cautious sometimes because we, in the Western world, there's this big thing about finding your purpose, and there's some sort of reverse judgment around us being a bad person if we can't find it. So there's other things that we can connect to as well as our purpose. So thank you. Great question. Great catch.
Awesome. Thanks for that clarification, Steve. Here's one that came in near the end, and I want to share with you. A good friend of ours that we've got to know recently shared this idea about loving the, finding out what people value. I'll just read out. Love it, but presumes our people feel that they can be open with us and won't be judged on their values. Need to presume that sharing values openly must start with our leaders sharing theirs. So what's your thoughts? Yeah. How do we make sure it's safe?
That is such a good catch, because values, when you talk about values, they're part of our core, right? That's why I didn't ask people to share what they wrote down, because it's like, oh, I'm going to share this at the risk of being judged, at the risk of being criticized, at the risk of being told that those are wrong, right? So whoever said this, very, very, very important. As leaders, we have to create that safe place. We've called it where they feel safe, significant, and situated. And a great way is to role model, as you're suggesting. Share, let's talk about values. A real safe one to do is, if you don't want to share your personal values, is look at the ones on the wall or on a paper and say, hey, which ones of these stand out to you? It's non-threatening. Somebody's, oh, creativity or collaboration or excellence. Oh, let's talk about that. So you can dip your toe into or wade into a discussion about values that may be less intense or less invested to get closer to talking about our own.
Very good, Steve. Very good. Here's one. What if someone's motivator, see when you're talking about motivators or key performance motivators,
Yeah.
what if someone's motivator is fair compensation for the work that they do?
Awesome. I think it's just as legitimate as all the other motivators, right? I think a motivator is a motivator because it gives us a pathway to something that they need or they value or they're hoping for. Fair compensation is a fair motivator, and I think everybody deserves fair compensation, right? We talked because we have a meaning measure and it comes up there. Compensation is one of the dimensions, and someone says, well, we don't pay. If you pay within market, we find that either in market somewhere, people are going to, if they understand why they're there and how they're there, they often let go of compensation. But if you pay below market and people know that they can get better compensation elsewhere, it will probably be an issue for a very long time, if not forever, right? So we've got to be honest about the level of compensation and what we can or cannot do. Okay, for sure. But it's a legitimate. All motivators are legitimate. That's what's so amazing, right?
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. There was a comment that was made, and that I want to link a comment that was made to a question that came up when you made the comment about people, leave as a result of poor leadership, and then a comment came in and say they stay for the same reason. So if it's good leadership, good quality leadership, people stay, which is great. A good question that came in, I think that links to that is, as a leader, how do I know if I'm having the impact that I want?
Oh, wow. Well, sign up for our webinar in January. So Chris is going to tell you about that before we're done. But two things, though, two really big points. We have seen people that don't trust their company and they're not feeling comfortable with their team, yet they say unequivocally they stay for that leader. So with that in mind, leaders have the most significant impact on an employee's experience, which is why it gets a lot of weight in the M3 domain. So it's really, really important. To the second question, right? That's why we want great leaders, because they actually assuage some of the other areas where we're lacking because of the profundity of the meaning that they create for employees. Now, the second one, how do we know we're a good leader? That's an awesome question. Most of us don't. One of the hardest things about leadership, Edward Flom, my favorite quote on leadership, is not that we are who we think we are, but how we are perceived to be by others. So the only way we can know if we're doing good leadership is if we can understand the experience of our direct reports. So their feedback, their input, their evaluation of us as leaders is the most accurate form, right? And the ones that sting, parts that sting as well. We do have a tool called the Core Leader Score, which is my favorite assessment and leadership development tool that we use with our clients to actually accurately assess leadership in 5 domains: respect, integrity, empathy, supportiveness, and performance. And it's awesome. So send us an email and we'll turn you on to that. But we're also going to present that in January. So thank you for the question.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. That's great. And we will make sure people have access to that. And one last question. By the way, I'm seeing chat in here, which is great. People talking about the platinum rule, which is great. Treat others how they want to be treated, which I think is exactly the moral of what Steve is saying here. Steve, one last question before I take over. What's 2 actions that I can encourage organizations, top leaders to take to improve this? So it's 2 to 3, but you're running out of time. So give two quick actions people can take away.
2 quick actions: tune into what your people need, ask them, right? And then this is it. We've talked about this before. People are not survey fatigued; they're disillusioned fatigued. They're tired of being asked and nothing's being done about it. The other one is do a town hall, do a mail out, thank people legitimately as an organization. If you're a really big organization, send out the leaders with the task of spending 15 minutes in a team meeting just telling the team how awesome they are. Now, some people automatically think about the 1 or 2 people they're struggling with. The most challenging employee and situation, there are things to be grateful, to appreciate, to acknowledge, to admire. So yeah, those are the very first 2 things. One of the things I know a good friend of mine is on here, and you're going to see in 2022, everyone's saying validation, empathy is important. Guess what? Human beings need to know and feel that we matter. When we feel that we matter and we're significant and we feel cared for, it activates our awesomeness. And watch out. So if the organizations can ensure that their people feel valued, they're going to do better than all right. So thank you, Chris, and thank you, everybody. I'm going to pass it over to Chris. I just love when you show up and ask questions and are here with us. So Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. We didn't get to every question, but we did our best to get through them. So feel free to reach out to us. We'll be sending out the recording to you along with the KPMS that Steve mentioned will be given to you as a gift to help you start to connect with those key motivators of your employees. Thank you again for joining us throughout the year. Join us in January for our next webinar, which is the ultimate leadership responsibility, which is going to build on what Steve was talking about, where we will share with you how to maximize your leadership impact in 2022. So we are committed to staying connected with you all, to keep you posted on what's going on, and we ask you to do the same. So reach out and let us know if there's anything else you'd like to hear more about, but stay connected. And thank you for making 2021 such a great year for us at Brivia. Very much appreciate it. Happy holidays, everyone, and take care.
Thanks, everybody.